Bullies humiliate poor girl daily, her father brought them to their knees. A story by Heartfelt Tales. The cruel laughter echoed through the school hallway as 16-year-old Maya Chin stood frozen, her homemade lunch scattered across the polished floor. Chocolate milk dripped from her favorite sweater, the one her grandmother had knitted with so much love, while three boys towered over her, their faces twisted with mock amusement. "Look guys, the scholarship girl brought us another show," sneered Derek, the ringleader, as he stepped on her sandwich deliberately. What Maya didn't know was that her father, David Chen, was walking toward the school's main entrance at that exact moment, about to witness something that would change everything. If this story moves you, please take a moment to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, comment below with your thoughts, and don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more inspiring stories that touch the heart. Maya had always been different from her classmates at Westfield Prep, the elite private school where she'd earned a full academic scholarship. While her peers arrived in luxury cars and designer clothes, Maya took 2 buses each morning, carrying her worn backpack and the quiet dignity her parents had instilled in her. Her father, David, worked double shifts at the local factory to support their family, while her mother, Lynn, cleaned offices at night to make ends meet. Despite their financial struggles, they had raised Maya to believe that kindness and hard work would always triumph over cruelty and privilege. The bullying had started subtly. At first, it was just whispered comments about her thrift store clothes or the fact that she brought lunch from home instead of buying from the expensive cafeteria. But as Maya's grades continued to outshine those of her wealthy classmates, the harassment intensified. Derek Morrison, son of the city's most prominent lawyer, had made it his personal mission to remind Maya daily that she didn't belong in their world. He was joined by his 2 loyal followers, Brad and Connor, who came from equally privileged backgrounds and seemed to find entertainment in Maya's discomfort. The daily torment took many forms. They would accidentally bump into her in the hallways, knocking her books to the floor. They created fake social media accounts to mock her appearance and family background. They would invite her to parties that didn't exist, only to film her confusion and share it with their friends. Maya endured it all silently, believing that if she just kept her head down and focused on her studies, she could graduate and escape to a better future. But that Tuesday afternoon was different. Maya had been rushing to her after-school job at the local library when Derek and his friends cornered her in the main hallway. "Hey, scholarship girl," Derek called out, his voice dripping with false friendliness. "We've been thinking about you." Maya tried to walk past them, but they blocked her path. "You know, we feel bad about how we've been treating you," Brad added, his tone mockingly sincere. "So we want to invite you to something special." Maya's heart raced as she clutched her backpack tighter. She had learned to recognize the cruel glint in their eyes that always preceded their worst pranks. "I have to go," she whispered, trying to step around them. But Connor moved to block her again. "Oh, come on, Maya. We're trying to be nice here. We want to invite you to Derek's birthday party this weekend. It's going to be epic." For a moment, Maya felt a flicker of hope. Maybe they had genuinely changed. Maybe they wanted to include her after all. But then she saw Derek's smirk and realized this was just another elaborate setup. "No, thank you," she said quietly, her voice barely audible above the noise of other students passing by. That's when Derek's mask slipped completely. "You know what? You're right to say no," he said, his voice rising. "Because nobody would actually want you there. You're just a charity case, Maya. A poor girl playing dress-up in a rich kid's school." He grabbed her lunch bag and dumped its contents on the floor. Even your food is pathetic. Homemade sandwiches? How embarrassing. As Maya knelt to gather her scattered lunch, tears streaming down her face, she didn't notice the man who had just entered the school building. David Chen had come to surprise his daughter by picking her up early from school. He had managed to get off work an hour early and wanted to take her out for ice cream to celebrate her latest academic achievement. But instead of finding his daughter waiting by the front office, he discovered her being humiliated by 3 boys who clearly had no understanding of respect or consequences. David stood perfectly still for a moment, taking in the scene. His daughter, his brilliant, kind, hard-working daughter, was on her knees, trying to clean up food that had been deliberately scattered by bullies. He saw the chocolate milk staining her sweater, the tears on her cheeks, and the cruel satisfaction on the boys' faces. Something inside him, something that had been building for months as he watched Maya's spirit slowly dim, finally snapped. But David Chen was not a man who acted rashly. He had learned patience and strategy during his years working his way up from the factory floor to become a shift supervisor. He had also learned that sometimes, the most powerful response is not the loudest one. Instead of confronting the boys directly, he quietly took out his phone and began recording. "You know what the best part is?" Derek was saying, completely unaware of the audience he now had. "Even if you tell someone, who's going to believe you? My dad owns half this town, and these guys' parents aren't far behind. You're nothing, Maya. You'll always be nothing." David had heard enough. He stepped forward, his work boots clicking against the polished floor. "Excuse me, boys," he said calmly. His voice wasn't raised, but there was something in his tone that made all 3 bullies freeze. "I think you've made a mistake." Derek turned around, his confidence faltering slightly when he saw Maya's father. David wasn't a large man, but he carried himself with the quiet strength of someone who had worked for everything he had. His clothes were simple but clean, his hands calloused from honest work, and his eyes held a determination that made Derek take an involuntary step backward. "I don't think we've met," David continued, his voice still eerily calm. "I'm David Chen, Maya's father. And I believe you just made some very interesting statements about my daughter." He held up his phone, making it clear that he had been recording. "I'm particularly interested in your claim that no one would believe her if she reported your behavior." The color drained from Derek's face. We were just joking around," he stammered. "Right, guys?" He looked to his friends for support, but Brad and Connor had suddenly found the floor very interesting to look at. "Joking," David repeated thoughtfully. "I see. So destroying someone's personal property, verbally abusing them, and creating a hostile environment, that's your idea of humor?" He looked at each boy in turn. "I have to say, I'm curious about what your parents would think of your sense of humor." Derek's bravado crumbled completely. "Please, Mr. Chen, it's not, we didn't mean." "Oh, but I think you did mean it," David interrupted. "I think you meant every word. And I think it's time you learned that actions have consequences." He knelt down to help Maya gather her things, his movements deliberate and controlled. "Maya, sweetheart, are you hurt?" Maya shook her head, unable to speak through her tears. David helped her to her feet and handed her his handkerchief. "Good. Now, gentlemen, here's what's going to happen. You're going to apologize to my daughter. A real apology, not the fake one you're probably preparing. And then you're going to help us have a conversation with your parents and the school administration." "You can't prove anything," Derek said desperately, his voice cracking. "It's just your word against ours." David smiled, and it wasn't a pleasant expression. Actually, I can prove quite a lot. You see, I've been investigating the harassment my daughter has been enduring for months. I have screenshots of those fake social media accounts. Yes, Derek, I know about those too. I have testimonies from other students who have witnessed your behavior. And now, I have a recording of you admitting that you believe you're above consequences because of your father's position. The truth was, David had been quietly building a case for weeks. He had noticed the changes in Maya's behavior, the way she had become withdrawn, the mysterious bruises she claimed came from clumsiness, the way she flinched when her phone buzzed. When he finally convinced her to tell him what was happening, he had been devastated by the extent of the bullying. But instead of reacting emotionally, he had channeled his anger into something more productive. He had documented everything. He had spoken to other parents whose children had been victimized by the same group. He had researched the school's anti-bullying policies and discovered that they were being systemically ignored. He had even done some investigating into the parents of the bullies, learning about their businesses and reputations in the community. Within 24 hours, David had arranged meetings with the school principal, the district superintendent, and the parents of all three boys. He presented his evidence methodically, professionally, and without emotion. He didn't make threats or demands for revenge. Instead, he simply laid out the facts and asked what they intended to do about it. The response was swift and decisive. Derek, Brad, and Connor were suspended immediately and required to attend counseling sessions about bullying and empathy. They were also required to write formal apologies to Maya and perform community service at a local charity that helped underprivileged families. The school implemented new anti-bullying measures and hired additional counselors to monitor student interactions. But perhaps the most powerful consequence came from the boys' own families. Derek's father, the prominent lawyer, was horrified to learn about his son's behavior. He had built his career on principles of justice and fairness, and discovering that his son was the opposite of everything he stood for was devastating. Derek found himself grounded for months, with his college fund contingent on genuine behavioral change and community service. Brad and Connor's parents were equally appalled and implemented similar consequences. More importantly, all three families were required to attend sessions with a family counselor to address the attitudes and values that had led to their children's behavior. Maya returned to school the following week to find a completely different environment. Word had spread about what had happened, and instead of being seen as a victim, she was now recognized as someone who had stood up for herself with dignity and strength. Students who had previously ignored her began to speak to her, and several even apologized for not intervening when they had witnessed the bullying. The three boys who had tormented her were subdued and respectful when they returned from their suspension. Derek, in particular, seemed genuinely changed by the experience. He approached Maya privately during lunch one day and offered a heartfelt apology. "I was wrong," he said simply. "I was angry about my own problems, and I took it out on you. That's not an excuse, but I want you to know that I'm sorry, and I'm trying to be better." Maya, with the grace her parents had taught her, accepted his apology. She didn't forget what had happened, but she chose to believe in the possibility of redemption and growth. The experience transformed not just Maya's school environment, but her relationship with her father. She had always known he loved her, but seeing him stand up for her with such strategic precision and unwavering determination showed her a new side of his strength. She learned that true power doesn't come from money or social status, it comes from integrity, preparation, and the courage to stand up for what's right. David's actions also had a ripple effect throughout the community. Other parents who had been struggling with similar issues found their voices and began advocating for their children. The school district implemented comprehensive anti-bullying programs, and several local businesses began partnering with schools to promote kindness and inclusion. Maya graduated as valedictorian 3 years later, earning a full scholarship to a prestigious university. In her graduation speech, she spoke about the importance of kindness, the power of standing up for others, and the lesson her father had taught her about true strength. As she stood at the podium, looking out at the audience that included Derek, Brad, and Connor, all of whom had genuinely changed and become her friends, she felt a deep sense of gratitude. The bullying had been painful, but it had also taught her about resilience, the importance of family, and the truth that sometimes the quietest voices can create the loudest change. David Chen sat in the audience, his eyes full of tears of pride. He had taught his daughter that she was never alone, that she deserved respect, and that sometimes the best way to fight cruelty is with strategic kindness and unwavering determination. But more than that, he had shown her that a father's love is a force powerful enough to move mountains, or at least to bring bullies to their knees. The story of Maya and her father became a local legend, a reminder that heroes don't always wear capes. Sometimes they wear work boots and carry lunch pails. Sometimes they show up at exactly the right moment with exactly the right combination of love, wisdom, and quiet strength to change everything. If this story inspired you or reminded you of the power of standing up for what's right, please take a moment to like this video and share it with others who might need to hear this message. Drop a comment below about a time when someone stood up for you, or when you found the courage to stand up for someone else. And don't forget to subscribe to Heartfelt Tales for more stories that celebrate the triumph of love, kindness, and human dignity over cruelty and injustice. Your support helps us continue sharing these important messages with the world.